On August 14th, 2019, the final minute barrier left in Super Mario Bros. Was broken.
Did I do it? Did I finally do it, dude? With the bonk in... I don't know for sure, but we finally got it.
Cosmic broke the 19-minute mark with a new world record of 18 minutes and 59.856 seconds in the Warpless category. When watching the speedrun, you may wonder how Mario can go through platforms, walls, enemies, and fire bars. Let's go through the run and answer all of these questions. This is the Super Mario Bros. Warpless World Record explained. First of all, many of you may be familiar with two videos that I made last year about the 80% run. This video will not assume prior knowledge, so no need to sit through 57 minutes of Super Mario Bros. Videos to understand this one. For returning viewers, I hope this acts as a refresher. Before the run starts, I need to clear up the information on the screen. This is a recording of Cosmic's livestream. On his layout, he uses the obvious things like the gameplay, the webcam, and a timer, but also less obvious stuff. An input display which shows which buttons are being pressed. A heart rate monitor which shows Cosmic's heart rate in real time. It sounds weird for a video game stream, but it's actually a great tool to show Cosmic's stress level as he progresses through the run. Split times of his personal best coming into this run that he compares against at the end of each of the 32 levels. Finally, some information over at the top. His 80% personal best, his current Twitch subscriber count, and how long he had been streaming for on that day. During this video, 3 different captures will be used: Cosmic's livestream, Cosmic's direct game capture, and demonstrations that I made on emulator. So now, let's go on with the run. Cosmic waits on the title screen to manipulate randomness. This will come up again in later levels.
Oh yeah, I do live there, You can DM me about stuff if you want. Like questions if you're trying to figure stuff out about it.
Here, Cosmic performs a trick called the flagpole glitch. Here's what happens step by step. First, Mario's position is carefully set with a series of frame-perfect inputs on the stairs. The game runs at 60 frames per second, so frame-perfect inputs have a 16 millisecond window. Mario's position for this trick needs to be precise down to about 1/4 of a pixel. Then, as Mario reaches the base of the flagpole, he's right next to the block on one frame and inside of it on the next. At this point, the game tries to push Mario out of the block. When Mario is partially inside of a block, the game does this by taking Mario's direction and pushing him the other way. However, because Mario hit the wall, his speed was set to 0. If left is pressed on the D-pad, Mario will then have a very small amount of speed to the left. So the game sees that Mario's moving to the left and pushes him to the right, further inside of the wall. The push from the wall is much bigger than the speed to the left, so the result is a net movement to the right. When Mario touches the flagpole, this sequence happens. Mario goes down until he hits this point, and then he stops moving. The flag goes down until it reaches this point. Once the flag reaches this point, Mario jumps off the flagpole and heads to the castle. However, something else makes Mario jump off the flagpole. If Mario reaches this point, the game ignores the flag's position and makes Mario jump off instantly. It's unclear why this condition was added, since the only way for Mario to reach that point is to clip inside of the flagpole base, but it is there nonetheless. This trick ends up saving time because the flag never has to come down. But to find out how much time flagpole glitch saves, there's one more thing to talk about: frame rules. The game is always making a check to see if Mario just beat the level so it can send him to the next one. Doing that check on every single frame would be a little bit excessive and could potentially slow the game down, so to be more efficient, the check is only made once every 21 frames. This means that levels can only be completed in multiples of 21 frames, as you can see with this comparison. The term frame rule is used to describe the phenomenon, but also as a unit of time. One frame rule is one multiple of 21 frames, or 0.35 seconds. Flagpole glitch saves 15 frames, but if the rest of the level is played fast enough, it saves enough time to complete the level one frame rule earlier than without the trick with 3 frames to spare. Cosmic did have to play the underground section nearly perfectly to save the frame rule. Frame rules are a very important element in Super Mario Bros., even more so in the Warpless run. At the world record level, the whole run is planned in advance. Cosmic knows exactly where he's going to save time and where he can afford to play suboptimally without losing time. We're going to talk about frame rules more throughout the run.
Yeah, Bismuth, we do, just like you ride Moose. Wow, Patty, you left? Maybe that's why it didn't work out.
Here, Cosmic grabs the mushroom from inside the block. Getting the mushroom is actually faster, but we'll see why in the next level. For now, let's look at how he grabs the mushroom. When Mario jumps under a block but is more than halfway outside of it, he will simply jump past the block and be pushed out instead. So for a moment, Mario is inside of the block, which allows him to grab the mushroom instantly instead of having to wait for it to come out of the block. Here, Mario stomps a Koopa from below. This is because in Super Mario Bros., Mario will stomp on enemies when they collide if Mario is high enough above them or if he's moving downwards. So if he's moving downwards, Mario's position doesn't matter and he will always stomp on the enemy no matter what. This works for any stompable enemy in the game.
Please go backwards. I like that.
Here, Cosmic kills Bowser with fireballs before hitting the axe. This is the reason why he grabbed the mushroom and a fire flower in the first place. Killing Bowser with fireballs is faster than simply bypassing him and grabbing the axe, because touching the axe while Bowser is still alive will make the bridge collapse and make Bowser fall to his death before Mario can move on. If Bowser is already dead, this sequence is skipped, which saves 132 frames or 2.2 seconds. This ends up saving either 6 or 7 frame rules depending on how the frame rules line up. Over the entire run, getting each power-up loses 4 frame rules initially, but killing Bowser saves about 6 frame rules each time on average. Most of the time, killing Bowser with fireballs requires you to slow down a bit, which means the full 6 or 7 frame rules aren't always saved. The first 7 Bowsers are killed, so it ends up saving about 30 to 35 frame rules overall, or about 10 to 12 seconds.
Bismuth has proclaimed this to be the run. Therefore it is. Reminder that last run...
There's a faster way to beat this level than using the spring to get up, but doing that would get a time of 3:46 at the end of the stage. Ending a level with a time that ends in 1, 3, or 6 will cause the same number of fireworks to appear. While getting 1 firework doesn't waste any time, getting 3 loses 2 or 3 frame rules, and getting 6 fireworks loses 7 or 8 frame rules. This strategy is perfect to finish the level at the fastest frame rule that's slow enough to avoid getting 3:46 and waste time.
What frame rules are you saving to get 1858? Well, 6-3, but also 4-3 and 7-1.
As you can see, Cosmic seems to have lost 0.1 seconds. This is actually not true. Cosmic controls his timer with a foot pedal, so it is subject to human error. As a result, it can fluctuate by a small amount, but Cosmic will still know when he gains or loses 1 frame rule, and it doesn't affect his final time. The official time of the run is calculated down to the frame using a combination of video analysis and emulator simulations, so the timer is only used as a tool to see what frame rule he's on. Here, Mario looks like he's sliding. This is an animation glitch that happens when you jump and throw a fireball on the very first frame of a level. This can easily be done by simply holding both A and B at the start of a level as Fire Mario. Cosmic jumped because it made Bowser go backwards at the end of the stage. But why is that true? The game controls the spawning position and the behavior of enemies like Hammer Brothers, Cheep Cheeps, Firebars, Podoboos, and Bowser using the number of frames since it was powered on. Because the game runs at 60 frames per second, this effectively randomizes the result for a casual player, but as long as Cosmic reaches a point in the game on a specific frame, he can know in advance where enemies will be and what they will do. So how can he know exactly which frame he'll be on at any given time? First, because of frame rules. Because levels can only be completed in multiples of 21 frames, there are far fewer possible times to enter each level than it seems. If a level is straightforward enough to make it possible to hold right throughout, this also makes every single random element within the level predictable, because for any given frame rule, everything will be loaded on the same frames every time as long as Mario never slows down. Second, because of planning. The entire speedrun is carefully planned from the very beginning. This includes going for Flagpole Glitch in 1-1 and playing every level at exactly the right speed. There are some levels that could be completed faster, but it would be harder. Instead, Cosmic willingly forgoes the time saves in these levels so he can play the game at a consistent pace that will give him patterns he can predict. Third, by waiting on the title screen. While most levels can be cleared without slowing down no matter what the random pattern is, some levels like 5-4 and 6-4 often have firebars that force you to slow down, so it's crucial that Cosmic reaches those levels on a specific frame rule that's favorable. He achieves this by waiting on the title screen for 4 seconds before starting the game. By pressing start in this 21 frame window and by playing the game at the exact pace he planned, he ensures that he'll reach all of the crucial points at a good time. For some patterns that aren't good like Bowser in 2-4, Cosmic intentionally slows down to get another pattern. Jumping at the beginning of the level loses 3 frames and can be done simply by holding A, so it is easy to do and works every time. It also happens to have this funny side effect. Thanks to frame rules, Cosmic can afford to lose 3 frames in this level without losing time overall, but there are many other levels where losing only 1 or 2 frames ends up costing 21 frames instead.
Yeah, that's it. If it has Bullet Bill Glitch in 5-1 like you said, then that is the current task. It says 1836 because task timing's different. They start from power on. Same with the any percent task, you'll see it says it's 457.3 when it's 454.0. It's impossible. Like, literally impossible by RTA rules, Oliver. The task barely gets the frame rule in.
Here, Mario goes straight through the platform. This is possible because the platform is thin enough. Because Mario has to line up just right for it to be possible, it only works some of the time on moving platforms, and it doesn't work with regular blocks because of their bigger size. This spot works consistently, so Cosmic makes use of it.
Had an intermediate one, saved 2 of those. But yeah, the 4 most recent frame rule improvements. I did it again. The spiny kill sound glitch. I think the only levels where Flagpole Glitch doesn't save time in RTA are... well... never mind.
This level has more than meets the eye. The frame rule threshold happens to be so tight that even if you play through the level perfectly, you can sometimes lose one frame rule over the optimal time. To save this frame rule, you need to reach the flagpole at a very specific height. When Mario goes down on the flagpole, he stops when he can't go any further down, or if he started high enough when the flag hits a certain point. Here, Mario can't be that high without having to raise the platform, so he's forced to go all the way to the bottom. But even then, he doesn't always stop at the same place. Because Mario moves down by exactly 2 pixels every frame, there's this much of a window for him to end up on where he can't move down any further. So just before he jumps off the flagpole, Mario can be square on the block or 1 pixel above it. This 1 pixel makes it so Mario spends 1 more frame in the air before he starts to walk on the block. But why does it matter? Well, it matters because of a crucial detail in Super Mario Bros. Mechanics. Mario accelerates the fastest in the direction opposite of which he's facing. So if he's moving to the right but facing to the left, he will accelerate faster than when facing to the right. As he jumps off the flagpole, Mario spends 4 frames facing left on the lower pixel and 5 frames on the higher pixel. The extra frame of fast acceleration ends up giving him enough extra speed to reach the castle 2 frames earlier, and in 4-3, this is enough to save another frame rule, so it makes a difference of 0.35 seconds. Therefore, Cosmic needs to jump at exactly this point so that Mario ends up at exactly this height so that the extra 1 pixel makes him accelerate faster for exactly 1 frame, saving exactly 2 frames walking to the castle, which happens to include the last frame of the faster frame rule. Like I said, this level has more than meets the eye. Here, Mario goes through the wall completely. How is that possible? This time, it's a little different than the flagpole glitch. Mario hits the wall precisely here on the top pixel of this block. Like we've seen before, when Mario hits a wall, he ends up inside of the wall for 1 frame before the game pushes him out. At this point, Mario is not only inside of a wall, but also on top of this block so he can stand on it. As he uncrouches, his head is now fully inside of a wall. When Mario is fully inside of a wall, the game always tries to push him to the right until he's out of the wall, so he's moved to the right through the wall and ends up on the other side. Here, Mario goes through the fire bar. This is simply because fire bar collisions are inaccurate. The fire bar calculates Mario's distance to its middle to decide if he's getting hit or not, but the critical distance is shorter than the visual fire. So when he's crouching, Mario can usually go through the tip of the fire bar without getting hurt.
Fake rainbow.
You can see Cosmic slowing down a lot more in this level than usual. This is in part to avoid finishing with a 256 and losing time to fireworks, since getting a 257 is impossible. He could have done it one frame rule faster, but doing that requires manipulating the in-game timer to tick down to 255 early enough and hitting the flagpole on the first couple of frames it ticks down. I won't go into detail about this for now. Cosmic decided not to go for this faster frame rule since it wasn't required to get 1859. If you paid close attention, you might have noticed the funny looking frames while Cosmic was killing Bowser. Frames like these are lag frames. They happen because the console doesn't have time to process everything to advance by a frame during the 16 millisecond window, so it doesn't complete the frame and it finishes it on the next. This effectively pauses the game for one frame, including frame rules, so Cosmic wants to reduce the lag to a minimum. In this level, he gets 2 lag frames, which is actually very good considering how laggy this Bowser fight can be.
I almost jumped to it too early because I wanted to be really sure. And then fireball that one Koopa.
Here, Cosmic gets 1 lag frame, which brings his total for the run to 3. So he lost 0.05 seconds to lag in this run. It looks like he should have taken damage on the plant. He didn't because the plant's hitbox is wildly different from the sprite. No one knows why the hitbox is so small, but it is possible that it was done intentionally, specifically to allow Mario to jump over tall pipes. You may be familiar with this level from the Any% run. This level's frame rule is extremely tight. To finish it fast enough, you need to do it without slowing down once, but even that's not enough. The flag normally takes 62 frames to go down. But the flag's vertical position has two components, a regular position and the subpixel position. The subpixel position is an internal variable that keeps track of a position within a single pixel. The flag shares some of its variables with items such as mushrooms or stars. When the star is loaded, its position and subpixel position are loaded in the game's memory. As it goes off screen, these positions stop updating. When the flag is loaded, it sets the new value for its position and overwrites whatever was left in the star's position. But it doesn't update the subpixel position, so it remains at the value the star had as its last subpixel position. If that subpixel position is 61 or higher, it will move the flag down by a fraction of a pixel just big enough for it to only take 61 frames to go down instead of 62. That one frame is sufficient to save the frame rule in the level. One quick note, in any percent, it's also important to hit the first pixel of the star block if you enter the pipe in 4-2 on a bad frame. This doesn't apply in Warpless, so Cosmic could hit the block anywhere as long as the star came out. In 8-4, frame rules don't matter because timing stops when Cosmic touches the axe at the end. For the same reason, he doesn't need to kill Bowser because the bridge collapsing cutscene happens after timing stops. So every frame counts in this level. The plant disappeared right before Cosmic was about to get hit by it. How did that happen? 4-4, 7-4, and 8-4 are maze levels. To reach Bowser, you need to take the correct path through each of the levels. If you go the wrong way, the section you were on loops and you have to try again. In 4-4 and 7-4, there are triggers that need to be hit at the correct height, which is why Cosmic took the path he did in those stages. In 8-4, he has to enter the correct pipes to move on. However, in the first room, the correct pipe is at the end, right before it loops. In fact, the pipe is located after the trigger that resets the room and makes it loop. As a room is reset, every enemy currently on screen suddenly disappears. So because the screen reaches the trigger to reset the room here, the plant goes away before it gets a chance to eat. Cosmic unfortunately touched the side of this pipe and lost time. When coming in from this pipe at full running speed, there's a frame-perfect window to jump without hitting this pipe, but Cosmic jumped on the second frame and hit it, which cost him about a quarter of a second. With that time loss, he knew he had to play the rest of the stage almost perfectly in order to still be fast enough for 1859 to be possible. Here, he jumped up from the side of the pipe. Similarly to the 4-4 wall clip, this is because he touched the pipe exactly on the top pixel of this block, so for one frame, the game treated Mario as standing on that block. By jumping on that frame, he was able to jump from the wall. This trick is pixel and frame perfect. Considering how late in the run this jump is, it's a very tense moment as you can see by his heart rate. To compensate for the time loss in the previous room, Cosmic did a fast acceleration in this one. To do that, you have to be holding B and press left on the first possible frame to turn Mario around, then release it on the next frame so that he stops moving, press right and A on the next frame so he jumps and starts moving to the right, and then release A as fast as possible. Mario then accelerates to the right while facing to the left, which is faster than if he had been facing to the right. There's one more detail I haven't talked about. Mario has two speed caps, a walking speed and a running speed. He can only accelerate past the walking speed cap if he's on the ground and B is being held. This means that if Mario jumps while still under the walking speed cap, even though B is held, he will be stuck at the walking speed until he lands from his jump. With fast acceleration, he gets past the walking speed cap while he's still on the pipe, which means he gets to accelerate to running speed immediately instead of having to jump off at walking speed and wait until this point to accelerate to running speed. For this reason, this fast acceleration can save up to 5 frames if done perfectly. Why did Cosmic overshoot the pipe and then turn around to enter it? Well, it turns out this isn't even the correct pipe to go to the water section. The correct pipe is actually this one. Cosmic performed a trick called wrong warping, and here's how it works. Most Super Mario Bros. Levels have pipes or vines that lead to bonus rooms and sub-areas. Many of them have more than one within a single stage. When Mario goes down a pipe or up a vine into a sub-area, the game needs to know which one to send him to. It does that by keeping track of how far into the level Mario was when he took the pipe or vine and place him accordingly. However, the game doesn't use Mario's position but the screen's position instead. So as the screen scrolls past this point, the game updates the room where pipes send Mario from this one to the water room. As you can see, at this point, this pipe is much closer than the intended pipe, so it is faster to simply scroll the screen far enough, then turn around and enter this pipe than it is to go all the way to the intended one.
Maybe.
In this room, Mario really looks like he's going through fire bars and even the ceiling. This is because Cosmic was holding down to crouch here. If Mario is crouching and then starts swimming, his hitbox remains as if he was crouching, which is the same size as small Mario. As a result, he looks like he's this size, but his hitbox is actually only the bottom half. As you can see, the actual hitbox gets past the fire bars just fine, considering the tip usually doesn't hurt Mario.
Maybe, if it let us pass, we might get it. Did I do it? Did I finally do it, dude? With the bonk in...
Because Bowser's pattern is controlled by what frame he was loaded on, and because 8-4 is a long level with many tricks, Cosmic can't control what Bowser is going to do, and he has to hope that he can get past him without slowing down and without getting hit by hammers. He had been very unlucky in previous attempts, losing 3 runs to the hammers, 2 of which were on the same frame. On top of that, if we look at the patterns on later frames, we can see that if Cosmic was 3 frames slower, he would have had this impossible pattern.
Dude! Are you kidding me?
If he had been any slower than that, this Podoboo would have been too low to avoid without having to wait for it. Therefore, the fast acceleration that saved him about 4 frames saved the run in extremis. Finally, the timer says 18:59.92 because he stopped it manually, but the official time of the run is 18 minutes and 59.856 seconds. It was calculated by counting the video frames of the recording and converting the 59.94 frames per second video into the NES's frame rate of slightly over 60, and verified on emulator by replicating a warpless run and looking at Bowser's pattern on that frame. Cosmic has been trying to improve this run further. He put together a speedrun in 1854 by splicing together levels while going for humanly possible but inconsistent strategies and by always using the best patterns even if it wouldn't actually happen that way in a real run. There is also a tool-assisted speedrun by Happily and Mars608 in 18 minutes and 33.5 seconds, although most of the tricks used in that run are a bit too difficult to perform in real time, to put it lightly. As of right now, Cosmic has been actively trying to get an 1858. You can see how he plans to achieve this in the video linked in the end screen. Meanwhile, second place runner GTAce has been attempting to get 1859 and beat the world record. The 19-minute barrier was broken, but the chase for perfection continues.